So I'll create a new Java project. I remember we started with some source code from the command line, right? Here, we did this. Well, yes. So I'll create new class. Always put your class in what? Packages. So I've created this class, bank account. Then we all know that bank account. So bank account. Every bank account works on what? Money, right? So we need money. That's what we work on. So this is what I'll do. I'll just create another class. And as you said, any what class within a class is called what? A nested class or an inner class. And we discussed about the 4 types. So when I say class money, this is a class which exists within this class. And always remember, if I have int or maybe string, so I have this class. Then I have money class. Assuming I want to make some deposit here, so I create a method. Deposit, which takes maybe the amount. So it takes the amount. So you have this class. So you can see this is a class. Always don't forget anything within a class is a member. So see this money class as if it's like this. When it's closed, it's just like what? This. So they are on the same level, or it is on the same level with what? These data members or data member variables. So that's how they can access themselves irrespective of the what? Access specifier. We're all in the same scope, the same class. We can see each other. Now I'm creating your deposit was successful. I'm not giving it any meaningful body. So when I call this method, it's supposed to what? Deposit for me. Now I want to ask, how do I access this class? Note, without the bank account, this money class does not exist. It exists within this. So if I want to access this, let me create a test class for it. Test class. And I want to create an instance of, let me give the bank account a normal method. Display method. That display, so I'll just sys out display method. This is the display method. If I create an instance of this bank account, and I say account dot display, it works perfectly. It works perfectly, right? It's just a normal class, and I'm calling this what? This method in it. Now, what if we want to call a method inside the inner class? Yes, inside the inner class, outside the outer class. Because the inner class, this class is a normal class, you need an object of the outer class. What do I mean by that? If I want to call the money only exists in the what? Bank account class. So I'll just say, if I just want to create an instance, I can just say bank account dot. Because when I press the dot, the money is there. The money class is there. So dot money is equal to new. Could have just said bank account. It will call anonymous inner types. But new bank account dot new money. Out test. So in this test, I'm outside. So I'll just create a bank account. First, I'll create it independent of the what? Then I'll create bank account dot. Let's show you. Still works. When there was no public and it was only package level, it was only visible within this package. So when I came to this package, it was not showing. It's telling us that money is not what? Visible. So to make it visible, I intentionally place what? Public. See. Now it's what? Visible. So this is a normal non-static inner class. The first one was the default. I've now made it public. Well, anything public is what? Open to all. If nothing is specified, it's package level. It's only visible within the what? Package level. Just take the words word by word. Wherever it goes, it doesn't change the meaning. A package is always what? A package. Now, when you make it private, what do you think will happen? When you make it private, what do you think will happen? To who? let me. When you say, when you are in a class, eh, like a normal class like this, and want to talk to each other, if I want the display, I'll just say display method. This one I can call it inside this method. Do you get it? I can call it inside it. I can't go outside and say this display is a method for this bank account class. It's not for this money class. So we say that within a class, private and public, whatever does not work here. If this is private, I can still have access to it. If this is also private, this guy can still also have access to it. Provided you create an instance of the money class. So say money dot deposit. So that's it. When you are in the same class, when you are within a class level and want to access your inner class, as I said, it's also a class. Before you can get access to any class, you need a what? A reference to the class object. So you created an object of this what? Money class. But this money class can directly access methods of the class because the money is also a member of what? This bank account class. That's why you could simply call this, even though this is private, we are in the same class, you can still have access to it. Doesn't matter. So to access methods of an inner class, you need an object of the what? That inner class before you can have access to what? Its methods. It's just like calling any object. So you've created an instance of this and you call the deposit method. So this is how you call normal what? Non-static inner classes. Now let's move to static ones. So I'll create a new package. I'll give it a new package. com.static Sometimes when you use keywords, they'll tell you it's wrong. Okay, there's 2 dots. So here I'll just say the same bank account. Then now let me change it in order to avoid confusion. So I will just refactor and give it employee. So employee class, I've created an employee class. Then within employee, every employee has some leave or he takes some leave. So I create another class leave inside the employee class. That will manage what? Each employee's what? Leave for him. So this employee has another inner class in it. Now let's come to the static one. When I make this static, always remember that static members are always called with the what? The name of the class dot that static member or that static field. So if this method, this class is now static, it means in order for us to call it, we need what? To use the what? The class name. You don't need an object of the class before you can call a static member. You don't need an object of a class before you can call a static member. You just need the what? The class name. So what do I mean by that? Let me for this. So private name, private int ID. I'll generate some getters and setters for the class so that you know it's a full class. Sources, generate getters and setters. Select all. I'll generate a constructor for it. Sources, generate constructor using food. Sources. If I just want the default constructor, just type control space. You see that default constructor will come. I'll choose that one. So this is it. This is a complete class. And within this class, you also have what? An inner class, which is what? Static. This is static class, leave. So for the leave to, I'll make it private string start day, private string date, private string maybe reason, then private string date of return. So I have this. This is also a normal class. So again here, I'll right click, generate getters and setters for it. So select all, generate getters and setters. It's just a normal class, so anything that applies to a class. So I'll create a constructor for it. This is the default constructor. I'll create a parameterized constructor for it. Generate constructor using false. That one okay. So this is a normal class. If I want to add any special method, I'll just say public void. Let me create a static method. So I create a static method. And we all know that static methods work on what? Static false. So if I just say private int number of days, then I'll just say number of days. Oh, I didn't bring the static. Static number of days is equal to 34. So this is the number of days, which is equal to what? 34. So assume when I say, let me name this method, set days. So this one will set the days to at 34. And I'll create another static method, public static get days. This is supposed to get this, so I'll just let's return number of days. So this one set the days to this, and this one return the number of days. This is just not when I compress it, this is what? A normal class, but it happens to be part of this class. Here for this, if I want to create a test class for this, I'll just create another class, test start, test static. I'll give you public static with me. Now look, please observe here. Here, look at how you create an instance of the static block. Normally, the class name is what? Employee, right? Dot leave is equal to new employee. If it were to be the other one, you have just said dot what? New. But if it's a static class, just dot leave. Dot leave. Should we just dot leave? Should be dot leave. Class dot in a class. That's it. Okay. The new should be here. So that one you don't need the new keyword. We have this employee class, which has normal what? Instance members with getters and setters and constructors. It also has a static class. Now, for static class, to access it, you just need the what? The name of the class dot that static block. It also applies here. Now, the fact that this is static class doesn't mean it should contain only static members. Note that the fact that this class is static, we said that static block works on what? Static data. But the fact that this class is static doesn't mean it works on only static data. No, it's just a normal class. The static is there just to depict how you can access that class. The fact that this static word is here before the class doesn't mean all these data should be static. No, this is just a normal class. This is here to tell us that anytime we want to access this, we need a outer class name dot inner class, our reference equal to new outer class dot the static class. You don't need any new keyword here. This new keyword is not required. So because of the static, you don't need this what? This new keyword. So see, anytime you see this static inner class, you are just trying to eliminate what? The new keyword being used there to call it. And when you come back to our employee class, we also have the leave class. We also have one static member and two static methods. And you know that irrespective of where you are, static blocks, including methods, only works on what? Static data. That's why when I try to set the date here to something, I'll get an error because cannot make a static reference to what? Non-static what? Phone. But if I want to access this date, the caveat is that unless I create an instance of this class, so I can just say leave is equal to new leave dot, then I'll say leave dot date. That one will work. This will work. When you are in a static block and you want to access non-static member or non-static phone, you need to create an object of that class. Then use the what? The dot notation to have access to it, just as we've done here. We are in this static block. We know that static blocks don't work on what? Non-static data. But there are situations where you want to get the data from the what? Non-static phone. In that case, you need to create an object which is being pointed by a reference to that object. Then use that reference to get that static, not non-static folder you want. If assuming the employee, let me just create. So I'll create some Homo sapien. Hope my sapien is correct. Homo sapien class. Then we need a Homo sapien. Just a recap of something. Still on the normal inner classes. Homo sapien. Then I'll create a class mammal. Then within the mammal, I also create a class, maybe man or human. Then class human, you also go down to man. And out of man, boy. No, woman can out of man. So you get woman. Class what? Babe. Baby. So baby, then maybe class kid, something. Then in the kid, I'll give it a method. Kid. Kid waits. Now, if you want to create an instance of this class, so I'll create another class. Why do I have an error here? Okay, this is hasn't changed. So here I'll create another class. Waste test. Starting with me. Now, if I'm to create an instance of this class, what will be the method? Or what will be the is homo what is the class? How do I still have an error here? So here I have Homo sapien. So in the waste test, Homo sapien dot mama dot human dot man dot woman dot baby dot kid. Is there any dot? No, we are done. Before you create a kid, it's equal to new. What's the order? Homo sapien dot new mama dot new human dot new man dot new dot dot new after the woman she wants to end it. So why is this act disturbing? Let me just break it to the next line. Woman dot new baby dot new dot. Oh, that's all. That's the last one. So we have this. Are you sure that's the last one? Yeah. So we have Homo sapien so you get a sequence. If there were to be a static in between any of them, assuming you make this one static, you make the woman static. Are you following? I'm trying to observe some pattern. When I take the static inner, I get an error. And it tells me the member type human cannot be declared static. Static type can only be declared in a static or top level. So this tells us that static only exists in one layer within a class level. That's when you can have static. But when you move inside, like another class like this, and I'm trying to create another static class, that one is accepted. So it should be static. Yes. Sequence mode. So here, mammal is static. So you don't need a what? New. And human is also static. Oh, I've missed. Human and mammal, they are both static. Are you following it? Let me just explain this. You have Homo sapien, and in the next layer you have what? Static mammal. Then the next layer, the next inner one, you have static human. Now when you come here, first it always starts with what? New Homo sapien. Because this static is part of this class, you just need a what? The class name. So that's why I just say Homo sapien dot mammal. Static block, you need a what? Just the class names. Then when you come here to, there's another static block, human. That one too, we also need a what? Dot human. Where am I? I'm explaining this one rather. So this dot mama, then dot human, then we proceed. After human, the rest is what? Normal what? Classes. But as I said, you can't have from just simple, you can't just have static anywhere. If it's static, it should be static throughout. Then to just stop for the non-static side. But I just wanted to know if there are thousands of inner classes, it's always the same way. The way you call one is the same way you call about 20 or 30 nested classes. Now let's move to the next type, where you have the local inner class. So that one I'll create I just recorded. So you are creating an area class. I'll give it a different package, com dot coffee dot. This time I'm creating local inner. Local inner. Local dot inner. Now within this area, I have a method. This is an area class, so private and length, private and width. Now I have a method, public void or and area width takes and length and width. Supposed to return something, so return, assuming for now, let me return 0 before I give it a meaning. Now I have this method. Then at a point I realized that this area, the value that I want to calculate is too much. Like the block of code is becoming too much. So I create another class inside this method. So I'll create another class class simple. So I've created this class. Then within the class, I'll just say public. I'll create other methods. Anything within a class can come here. Public void. Public void. Public get area or something. Public void get area. Return. For now, let me return 0. Now here, you can see that this is just a normal method. And within the method, we've declared a class inside the method. So this is the local class. We've declared a class inside the what? The method. Now I want this area to calculate the what? The length, the area of something. Assuming you are calculating an area of rectangle, get area or something. Then here, I know this method has this data type, and this one also has this data type. I'll declare another local variable, int result. Then here I'll just say result is equal to length. Now there are two lengths. Okay, let me just use the normal one. Length times width. I'm expecting an error. Cannot refer to non-final variable length inside an inner class defined in a different method. When it comes to local classes like this, when there's a class inside a method and it wants to refer to any local variable in that method or in that block, those local variables need to be declared final. So this needs to be final. This also needs to be final, as well as this. And we know final methods are supposed to be initialized. Assuming this is not there, I want to return this. I want to return this straight away. I want to return length times what? Wait. Now, look at the error I'm getting. Cannot refer to non-final variable inside an inner class defined in a different method. So when you are within an inner class, inside a block or a method, so when you declare a class in a block or a method, that class can only use the variables of that block, provided those variables are declared what? Final. If they are not declared final, they cannot be used inside that class. When you have a class within a block, and a block could be a method or any normal block, that class has access to only the final variables, local final variables of that block. It doesn't have access to any other variable, with the exception of the final ones. What do I mean by that? This length here is a local variable. This is also a local variable to this method. Because I want to use it in this class, I need to make them what? Final. And final variables cannot be changed. And a class found within any block can only work on what? Final variables of that block. And since you know final variables cannot be changed, here you just take the variables and what? Use them. So let's create a normal block, which is not any method. It will work. Yes. Yes. I just have to use, if I want to use a class level length, this dot length always, when you have two variables, when you have two variables, always the local one supersedes the what? The outer one. Even though you have the same length here, I was trying to call the one outside. Yeah. So here we can see that we have this length. I'm saying that if the outer class happens to have a local variable, which is also this instance variable has the same name as the local variable in this block, and there's a class within that block who want to use this local variable, that one is acceptable. But if this class wants to use this instance member, because this instance member already exists here as the same name as the local variable, this class will not have access to it, even if you try to use the this keyword, unless you create an instance of this class before you can have access to it, and that's not what you want. You want to have access to this one directly. So the only caveat around is to just what? Change this variable name to a different name so that you can have access to it. When you change this one to this, you can see that this one is referring to this. But when it was the same name, so you now have 1, 2, the same name. But when you are within this class, the local supersedes the what? The outer class. So just observe about this and just note it somewhere. The last one is the anonymous class. Now with the anonymous, let me close all these ones. With the anonymous, I'll create an abstract class, one abstract class and one interface. Candidate, I'll make it an abstract class. Then I'll give it some abstract method, one abstract method. So I've given it what? One abstract method. Then I'll also create an interface. Oh, let me create a package for them. So new interface. Admission. Let me just use our default standard iAdmission. And I'll give it a name. com.anonymous classes or anonymous. I'll move this candidate into this. Now we all know how interfaces works. I'll create, we know by default all methods in the interface are what? Public abstract. So whether you state it or not, they are by default public abstract. So I'll just say I'll create a method look for admission. Method. You should return Boolean, whether it was successful or not. So I have this method in this interface. Now, and I also have this class, candidate class. And we all know that for interfaces and abstract classes, before you can use them, it's either you implement or you extend. There are situations where you just want something small. Like for instance, this one, there's only one method inside it. I just want to know whether I'm a potential candidate. I don't want to extend the class before I'll call that potential candidate. That's where the anonymous classes comes in. What do I mean by that? Let me create our last test class. Here, test anon. I'll give public static void main. There's a student. He wants to know whether he's a potential student and also whether he can look for an admission. And these stuffs or these methods are provided by what? This interface and what? This abstract classes. And you all know that the abstract classes, you always need to what? Extend them before you can use them. Whilst the interface, you are supposed to what? Implement them before you can use them. So I have this guy. Instead of creating a class to implement the what? The interface, said no, I just want to use the interface. So that's where the anonymous classes comes in. So here we just say admission is equal to new control space. When you press control, you can see that anonymous inner type. When you press enter, it generates this for you. This will be new admission. You are creating a class. You are creating a class which doesn't have a name. And that class is being referenced by this. So you say new admission, then look for admission. Then you put your implementation here. I'm looking for admission. Once again, there's this interface. Under normal circumstances, if I want to use this interface, I have to create a class that will implement this interface. There are situations where there are thousands of interfaces. There are a lot of interfaces. You realize that no, I just want only one method in that interface. You know, like it's an interface which has only one method. And I'm only interested in that method. I don't want to create a class that will implement it before I call that method. So I'll create my anonymous type, anonymous class, like this. So there's an interface. So new anonymous type, and this one will override what? The method for me. This is the same as creating a class and implementing what? This interface. And once you implement an interface, you're supposed to what? Override this. So this guy is doing whatever I want to do for me. So when I call this code, line of code, it will run this for me. It will run check for this boolean for me. For the interface. Again, this same guy is also want to test whether he's a potential candidate. And this method is being what? It's in this abstract class. So again, he comes and say candidate is equal to new candidate. The same thing. You can see it's creating what? Anytime you are using a class, the APIs, and it's giving you, when it say new and it's giving you anonymous, it means that class is either an abstract or an interface. It doesn't have a concrete class. So you extend from that class and override those methods, or you do the anonymous type. So when I do this, here I can say I'm a potential candidate. I'm a potential candidate. So here too is the same thing. You won't see any output. Usually when you do this, you bind these two. Candidates. So if I want to call this method candidate.potential, the same with the what? Admission. So admission dot look for admission. So when I call these methods, even though I've not created instance of the class, I've just created a reference which is pointing to an anonymous type, and I'm using that reference to call those methods. I don't need a class. This does not belong to any class. It only works here and it's done. So when I run this code, expecting an output, I'm a potential candidate. I'm looking for admission because of the order in which I called them. So this is anonymous, and the normal security class we should have created. So if I have a class, use, or maybe admin or something. Here, if I want to use both methods, let me give it a nice name. Student potential. Student potential. Here, because I'm interested in whether I'm a potential candidate, I will what? Extend from the what? The candidate class. And also, I'm also interested in to know whether there's an admission. I also call the what? iAdmission method. So normally, this is what we're supposed to have done. And when you do this, this class will do what? Override these methods for me. So this class will override these methods for me. So this is what? Student potential look for admission. LFA, look for admission. This one to the same. Student potential. Now, if I were to call this class in the test class, what would I have done? I would just say what? Student what? Potential. SP is equal to new student potential. Then I'll say SP dot what? Potential. SP dot what? Look for admission. This is the same. Instead of creating a separate class, I'm going to override and implement before I create an object and do it. I just do it what? One time at where I need it. When I run it, you see the difference. This is coming from what? The normal one. This is coming from what? The student potential. It's the same way, but the other one is named. This is named. This is a class which has a name, student potential. What class does this belong to? What class does this belong to? What is the class of this candidate? This candidate is anonymous. You can't create an instance of an abstract class. Can you call a method of an abstract class? Here we are calling a method. Here we are calling a method. You need an object of the class before you can call it method. An abstract class, you cannot create an object of the class. So that's where the anonymous types comes in. This